for lockdown, while government says it is doing enough to cushion small, medium and micro enterprises impacted by the COVID-19 lockdown. It does seem, though, that not everyone is playing ball. The Chamber of Commerce says it has seen a survey following a spike in complaints of non-payment from small and medium enterprises who say that they are struggling to make ends meet as a result of not being paid by their corporate clients. They fear that lack of cash flow could spark a wave of closures and job losses, exacerbating the impact of the coronavirus, where they are already hard hit. Non-payment is not a new struggle faced by SMEs. And to talk about this, I'm joined now via Skype by Waheed Adam. He's president of Entrepreneurs Organization. A very good evening to you, Mr. Adam. Thank you so much for speaking to us. So since lockdown began, what exactly are you seeing? What is your experience, and just how big a proportion of corporates refusing to pay SMEs are you seeing?
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, SABC. I think as the president of the Entrepreneurs Organization, one of the very early temperature checks we've done with our members was to understand their challenges, particularly, and I'm sure the obvious, of this lockdown and the impact it has had. Notwithstanding that, the pandemic has caused the lockdown, one of the other challenges that members were facing were the fact that the multinationals and large corporates, in particular those that we understand are not necessarily challenged by cash flow, were withholding payments. Now, we know from other reports, and this is prior to the pandemic, that late payments was always a challenge within the SME environment, and that goes to the micro environment as well. But more so at this particular time, when I think we require corporates to understand their responsibility beyond their own business, that members were still struggling with this particular challenge. We decided that we needed to voice that, not necessarily to name and shame any particular company or companies, but rather to appeal to the corporate environment, to the multinational environment, to those that have the capability to rather just keep to their contractual agreements with the SMEs by paying their accounts, so that business can still, during this challenging time, have some runway to continue. Now, bearing in mind that the multinationals and corporates may have a longer runway than most others.
Now, you have said that at least 40% of these late payments have to be written off by SMEs as a result of this practice. I'm just wondering, what kind of tactics are they employing now? And as you were talking, I was thinking of someone that I know who, you talk about multinationals and you'd never believe the scale or the stature of the companies who just simply say, yes, we are trying to pay you, but it's going to take longer because of COVID-19, even though it's a long overdue payment.
Well, that's absolutely correct. A lot of the conversations we've had in the early stages of the lockdown were really accounts that were payable from January orders or February orders, not necessarily from something that was happening particularly within the lockdown. And that to me is just unforgivable. Right? This is something that you should have paid already, and the SME is really carrying that account for you for 30 days or 60 days, and sometimes it's 90 and 120 days. And now all of a sudden you refuse to pay for that because there's a pandemic and your business may be impacted, let alone the businesses that are supporting you, for that matter. So to me, that was the initial argument. Of course, when it comes to corporate tenants that refuse to pay their accounts, that's very current. And of course, some of them have been in the public face in media already, and have publicly said now that they're not paying. And fortunately, some are now coming to the call of organizations like ourselves, as well as government's appeal for ethical action and pay the accounts at this point.
I'm curious which sectors these blue chip companies fall under, and just also if you can comment on this, somebody at Research Intellidex saying that part of the problem is the lack of flexibility in the South African economy. How does this affect you?
Well, I think from a sector perspective, we've seen a lot of the retail environment, and again, a lot of the media has reported on that, and that was largely around rentals. But we've also seen it from the large alcohol beverage companies that now refuse to pay their accounts. We had certain members that actually had product that was supplied to retail with a purchase order, and retail asked them to come and pick up their goods because they don't think they could pay for it. I mean, to that degree, where they prepare to break an agreement. And I guess if you are a supplier to a big retail chain, then you don't want to damage your relationship. You fear victimization. So to some degree, people are almost bullied to succumb to that request. We've also seen it, I think, from the industries like the health industry, not particularly government health institutions, of course, but those that supply product to that, where they've made flat statements that they will not pay. And then large branded coffee retailers as well were amongst the POC. Airlines, of course, we understand. I mean, SAA was one of them, but we understand where SAA is. They had financial challenges prior to the actual pandemic. We know there's a real issue there, but really referring more to the companies that we understand don't have the cash flow issues at all.
So, as mentioned, government through monetary and fiscal policy changes has put forth 800 billion rand to help companies, individuals being impacted by COVID-19. And I'm just wondering, do you think this is going to help change the situation for SMEs? Because some of them, I'd imagine, if they haven't run out of business, they are near collapse.
As the Entrepreneurs Organization's membership base, I can tell you that we have members that are corporates, so they fall into that side of the ecosystem, and we have members that come out of the SME environment. Some were in the tourism and health sectors as well, in terms of gym environments and so on. So you can imagine that businesses have completely gone to zero. There, no doubt, will the government relief, as well as the Solidarity Fund and the likes of tax relief, come into play. It will favor them. It will be something that will assist them. How long for? I guess that's the question. It may be short-lived, and I don't believe that South Africa has the kind of runway to support businesses for very long. But of course, our corporate environment, in terms of our membership, there it's a different challenge. So they may not be facing
So what kind of flexibility would you call for to help SMEs to survive this?
Well, I think the easing of the different phases that bring back the economy to life is needed. And it's clearly a challenge for government. I mean, there's the balance between saving the economy and as well as saving lives, and lives do come first. So how long will that be? It's still early to say. The experts can't tell us what that period is going to look like. But if we follow what's going on in the other parts of the world, we clearly can see that there's still a few months ahead of us without the normal business profile. So in that regard, again, it's how long can these relief opportunities help these businesses survive in this time? I think we're going to see a lot of casualties, unfortunately. So when the pandemic is all over, we're going to be licking wounds.
So give us a perspective of just how big that casualty or casualties may be. Some say the SME sector is the biggest or amongst the biggest employers in South Africa. Could we see a bloodbath just in terms of the employment sector?
I believe it's going to be a bloodbath. I think that if I look at our own membership base, we're obviously concerned about how long they're going to survive within these current conditions. And as an organization, we're here to support. I mean, that's why I think all entrepreneurs should belong to some form of an organization, because entrepreneurship is a very lonely journey. And if you are on your own, it could be frightening in how to deal with your business during this time. So one of the things about our organization is about the support. We're also a global organization, so we're not just a South African organization. We're part of 195 chapters around the world in 62 countries, 14,500 members. We fortunately get to talk to people out of China, for example, that had the early impact of the virus. And we can currently also talk to the US in terms of now being the epicenter of the world. So we get to have these conversations everywhere in the world from all our members around. And that does help us prepare for what we should be doing and how long we can anticipate this pandemic to have us in South Africa locked down.
What counsel are you receiving from them? We're talking about the fact that now we've dropped to level 4, but as we're speaking to a political economist earlier on, it doesn't necessarily mean that there will be a release or some injection of cash flow, because some businesses, won't be able to open, and some businesses just won't have the capacity to do that. So those who have come out of lockdown in other parts of the world, what lessons are you gleaning from them?
One of the big things happening within our organization is that businesses that have completely come to a standstill or near that end have learned through conversations that we've had globally to pivot their business. So what I'm saying is that we had, for example, a member who were making garments and supplying electronic goods, so very much corporate branding kind of stuff, have gone into making masks, pivoting their business completely. We have a member who has been in the 3D printing environment, and now she has turned her business into printing masks. So it's about pivoting your business early enough and not hoping that the pandemic will come to an end soon. I think that's one of the big lessons we've learned from our international community in EO. So pivot your business as soon as you can.
So sink or swim or adapt. Thank you so much for speaking to us. Waheed Adam is president of Entrepreneurs Organization. We'll have more news about what's happening here and around the globe. This is The Globe here on SABC News Channel. We're going to take a quick break. Do stay with us.
Among the regulations was the ban of alcohol during this period.
Alcohol is the thing that makes people to enjoy, to me.